So the national perception on the Stanford football team after the Northwestern game versus what they did at the LA Coliseum, followed up by a decent road effort at Oregon State, completely different. We know the situation in the Pac-12. You got to bring it just about every week. And the Cardinal have the defending Pac-12 South champion Arizona Wildcats coming to town. Nick Dempsey of Rule of Tree joining us to break it down. Nick, thanks so much for the time. Let's start with Stanford, and let's start with the quarterback position. Kevin Hogan, much documented some of the struggles and issues that he had off the field last year, so it's very understandable his ups and downs. He seems to be in a different place right now in regards to being the guy, the guy that leads this team and fully entrenched as the starter, of course, but even beyond that, being very much respected in that locker room as the guy.
Yeah, I think last year he dealt with some things that, honestly, your average 22-year-old doesn't have to deal with. And he went out and did it on national television against playing football against great competition. So I think just being able to do that earned him a lot of respect. And to his credit, last 2 games, he's really been playing well. So I think that's really helping him along as well.
This Christian McCaffrey is something to watch, Nick. I didn't expect him to ever tote the ball 30 times as he did in this last game, but I expected him to be a little bit more of a change-up, but he can possibly carry the mail on a more regular basis.
Yeah, that I had a huge concern because he's kind of small for a guy who's putting up 30 a game. You think over a long season that's going to do some damage, but he put on a lot of muscle. I think he was a 185 last year, around 215-ish. But he's doing some damage, and I didn't think they'd send him up the middle as often as they did. They like to get him in space last year and just let him run and make some moves. But this year, he's just all over the place.
Nick, I truly hate to disrespect anyone, and I don't disrespect Arizona. It was just a head scratcher for me that they won that division last year. I thought Arizona State, USC, UCLA, all better, and possibly even Utah, but they won the division. They were a bit exposed in the championship game and then going to the Fiesta Bowl against Boise State. I think the same thing happened last week. Scooby Wright has to be on that field for them to have a chance at defense. But when he's not on that field, and even sometimes when he is, they get pushed around. They don't necessarily look like willing tacklers in the secondary. And this just seems like a ready-made matchup for Stanford just to push them around.
Yeah, they had an obscene amount of missed tackles against UCLA. Gosh, they made that Bruins offense look awfully good. They gotta wrap up. They gotta get it together on defense. It's I give Rich Rod credit. A lot of people forget he had a bunch of 10-win seasons over in West Virginia before whatever in the world happened in Ann Arbor. But yeah, they gotta wrap. They have some tackling problems, and you just mentioned Christian McCaffrey. He could have a huge night if they can't wrap up.
And then they're offensively challenged suddenly. If Anu Solomon can't go, he's day-to-day at this point. 11 touchdowns, no picks, 66% passer. As a freshman leading them to a division championship, then he comes back and he's even better this year. And we saw what Gerard Randall brings to the table. He's a running quarterback. He's a guy that is a running back who's going to throw the ball at like a 33% clip. And I know the sample size limited, but based on watching the throwing motion and watching the decision-making process, that's pretty much what he's going to give you. So that would really limit them in the passing game.
Yeah, it really kind of sounds like if Arizona's going to win this, they're going to have to honestly beat Stanford at their own game. They're going to have to run the ball really well. Probably going to want to keep the ball out of Christian McCaffrey's hands as much as humanly possible, and Barry J. Sanders and Ramon Wright and all those guys. But yeah, they're going to have to really get the run game going, maybe set up the pass. How they're going to have to figure it out, keep that ball out of Stanford's hands.
Nick Dempsey joining us from Rule of Tree. Nick, I saw the Northwestern game. I saw the second half of the USC game, saw the Oregon State game. Is Stanford as good defensively in the front seven as what we've seen in winning Rose Bowls and being a Pac-12 champions in recent years? Because the Northwestern game cannot be blamed on the defense whatsoever. But when the Wildcats needed to keep the ball away and extend drives in the fourth quarter, they were able to do that. But otherwise, it seems to be a Stanford defense that seems to be in the realm of what they've had in the past.
Yeah, they're close. I don't think they're quite as dominant. I think, I mean, 9 new starters on defense. That's getting all those guys in rhythm and dominant. That's going to cause a problem. But they've also got some injuries they're dealing with up front on the defensive front seven. They can still step up when they need to. They just, unfortunately, they had no help on offense against Northwestern. And welcome to the tale of the two Stanfords. But they're struggling at times. But lately, the offense has been putting up 30 plus every game, so they haven't had to be as dominant. What I'm really going to want to see is what happens when they get into a big, tight, close game. Can they, when they need to get a stop on 3rd and short, can they do it? And right now, I'm not sure. I'm inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I don't know.
On surface, the way Stanford's playing and the way Arizona showed up against its first difficult test last week, it would seem like a slam dunk, especially considering the Anu Solomon situation and considering what we just mentioned in regards to physicality of these two teams. But we know in college football, different teams show up, and unless you're really, really elite and unless you're really, really poor, wow, they're two good football teams. So who knows what we're going to get this week?
Yeah, Pac-12 After Dark has certainly earned its reputation. And it's going to be 10:30 over at night over on the East Coast on the Pac-12 network. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of team Arizona is. I think this is going to be a defining game for them for their season. You know, are they going to bounce back after a blowout loss and show up big, or is it just they're just not going to be there and get steamrolled? But it's college football, and Stanford fans know all too well about all of your lovely Vegas odds and everything. They'll be more than happy to bring up 2007 USC when they're, I believe, 41-point dogs. So, and the Northwestern game, I think, taught them a very valuable lesson. You got to show up. You can't just automatically beat anyone.
Hey, Nick, before I let you go, you're obviously a guy that has the pulse of the Pac-12, if not the entire nation. Going into this season, I was interested to see how the Pac-12 would perform against the other Power Five, specifically in comparing the Pac-12 to the SEC, because unfortunately, these are the two best conferences in college football. There would be few people that would argue that. There would be a lot of people that would argue one or the other. Unfortunately, they didn't play in the regular season or the postseason last season. Then we had the one Texas A&M Arizona State matchup. I'm not going to go by one game. How good is the Pac-12? Oregon looks to be down, but maybe that's to Utah's credit. Once they start to play within a silo, it's difficult to compare. So what do you think about the Pac-12?
Anybody who tells you who knows exactly what's going on with the Pac-12 right now is probably a liar. But I think everybody's just sort of having a weird September. They're all feeling each other out. It's weird because you've got Cal in competition for the Pac-12 North, and then all of a sudden Arizona State and Arizona, you're wondering what the world's going on there. And then Utah is at the top of everyone's power rankings. I think it suggests a pretty deep conference in terms of talent and skilled teams. How they compete against the SEC, I don't know. The SEC is always good, but you know the SEC West just got leveled in bowl games last year. So it's tough to say. I will though say I'm excited to see. I believe USC and Alabama play each other to open up the season next year. So that could be very interesting.
All right, Nick Dempsey from Rule of Tree and also Conquest Chronicles on the SB Nation platforms for Stanford and for USC. Nick, thanks so much for the information and the insight.
Absolutely. Anytime.